She took a night shift to the hotel, then met the millionaire who would rewrite her future. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. She wasn't supposed to be there. Emily Carter had spent her shift scrubbing marble floors, her hair tucked beneath a faded housekeeping cap. But a frantic call from management changed everything. The night receptionist had fallen ill. Could someone fill in? Against instinct, Emily volunteered. It was only for one night, they said. Simple. Quiet. Now, she stood behind the vast reception desk of the Clarion Grand Hotel, trying to remember the login codes. The lobby seemed to breathe on its own, its chandeliers throwing starbursts across polished stone. Beyond the towering glass doors, rain swept the empty city streets. Midnight approached. Emily's heart thudded louder than the ticking clock. Every detail seemed sharper here. The scent of orchids, the distant clink of glassware, her reflection in the darkened windows. She adjusted her ill-fitting blazer and whispered just one night. Then the revolving doors shifted. A man emerged from the rain, his arrival as silent as a shadow. His coat dripped onto the marble, dark shoes soundless against the floor. He moved with unhurried purpose, a sharp suit tailored to perfection. But it was his eyes that arrested Emily, piercing, unreadable. They swept the room before settling on her. Alexander Drake. Even Emily, far removed from boardroom gossip, recognized the name. Billionaire. Reclusive. Dangerous, some whispered. Yet here he was, standing before her without entourage, without announcement. "I'll need the penthouse," he said. His voice was low, steady, more a statement than a request. Emily blinked. No reservation. The system didn't allow impromptu penthouse bookings, but her protest caught in her throat under his unwavering gaze. Hands trembling, she fumbled through the interface. Each click echoed in the silent lobby. Alexander watched without impatience, as though the delay amused him. A faint smile ghosted his lips. Emily finally printed the keycard, her fingers brushing his as she handed it over. Cold. Smooth. "Thank you, Miss Carter," he said softly. She hadn't introduced herself. Alexander turned, disappearing into the private elevator without another word. Emily stared after him, pulse racing. How had he known her name? Why was someone like him here alone, without warning? The rain intensified, streaking the glass. The lobby, moments ago a gilded cocoon, now felt cavernous and cold. Emily hugged her arms and glanced toward the empty elevator shaft. A soft ding echoed from the console. A new message flashed on the reception screen. Deliver tea to penthouse. From guest, Alexander Drake. Emily's breath caught. The night had only begun. The lobby hummed with static unease. Emily perched behind the marble counter, fingers tracing invisible patterns on its edge. Her heart hadn't slowed since Alexander Drake vanished into the private elevator. The screen still showed his name. Penthouse, occupied. The phone shattered the silence. Front desk, this is Emily, she answered, voice thin. A cascade of guest demands followed. Extra towels, a faulty air conditioner, noise complaints. She responded on autopilot, eyes flicking toward the elevator as minutes bled into hours. Midnight dissolved into morning. Then, precisely at 2:03 a.m., the console lit up again. Incoming call, penthouse. Emily's throat tightened. This is Emily. A pause. Then the same low voice, steady and direct. I'd like tea. Bring it up yourself. Not room service. Her. Why? A dozen reasons tangled in her mind, none logical. Yet her feet moved before her thoughts could catch up. In the staff lounge, she prepared a tray, Earl Grey, porcelain cup, no sugar. Her reflection in the kettle's gleam revealed flushed cheeks, wary eyes. Moments later, she stood outside the penthouse door. One deep breath. She knocked. Come in. The suite unfolded before her in muted tones. No bright lights, only the warm glow of lamps. Thick drapes concealed the city beyond. A faint scent of leather and smoke hung in the air. By the window, Alexander Drake sat in silence, one leg crossed, gaze fixed beyond the glass. He barely turned as she entered. Set it there. His voice was softer now, edged with something unspoken. Emily approached the side table, hands steady despite her racing pulse. She dared glance at him. His sharp profile was half-lit, eyes shadowed. But her gaze caught on something else. Faint bruises along his knuckles, the stiffness in his shoulders, the deep weariness etched in every line of his face. She placed the cup down, her breath shallow. "Thank you, Miss Carter," he said again, this time with a glance that seemed to peel back her every thought. Again, her name, without introduction. The chill of it sank deeper than the cold outside. "You're welcome," she managed. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The air between them thickened, charged with questions neither dared ask. At last, Alexander looked away, lifting the cup with deliberate grace. Dismissed, Emily backed toward the door. The lock clicked softly behind her. She pressed her back to the hallway wall, lungs aching. What had just happened? Back at the front desk, she stared at the console, but her reflection in the screen was no longer the same. There was something wrong. Alexander Drake hadn't chosen this hotel by chance. And she was no longer just an observer. As the first pale light crept into the lobby, a single thought looped in her mind. Why me? Then the phone rang again. Nights blurred into a quiet rhythm. Alexander Drake didn't leave the hotel. His presence remained as understated as it was unnerving. No visitors, no press. Yet every evening, his name appeared again on the console. A request, always indirect, but unmistakably personal. "Emily, could you recommend a book? Emily, would you bring coffee? Emily, do you enjoy art?" She complied each time, not out of obligation, but from a strange pull she couldn't define. Their conversations were never long, but they lingered. In fragments and sideways glances, she glimpsed his world. Fractured partnerships, a public breakup cloaked in silence, a boardroom betrayal that hadn't made the news. Yet, he spoke little of emotion, but his eyes often lingered on the skyline, as if searching for something lost. Emily didn't pry. Still, her silence seemed to draw him in more than questions ever could. In return, Alexander grew curious. He asked about her life, not with idle interest but focused attention. Her love for poetry, the way she supported her mother, the job she took to escape a past too heavy to carry. It wasn't friendship, not yet, but it wasn't distance either. Downstairs, something shifted. Two men lingered by the fireplace, suits too stiff, smiles too hollow. Another wandered the halls with a camera, claiming to be a blogger. Hotel security noticed too. They tightened their rounds, changed codes, but gave no answers. Emily began to feel it in her bones. Eyes where there shouldn't be, questions hanging midair. One night, she entered the penthouse to find Alexander unusually still. No book in hand, no coffee request, just him, staring at a sealed manila envelope on the table. He didn't acknowledge her at first. Then, "Do you trust easily, Emily?" She hesitated. "Not really." "Good." He turned slowly, the edge in his voice sharpened by something unseen. "Then don't. Not here. Not now." It was the first time he had ever sounded afraid. Emily wanted to ask more, but he changed the subject with practiced ease, masking the moment like it had never happened. She left more unsettled than before. That evening, she saw the same two strangers again, this time in the parking garage, speaking into earpieces. One glanced up at her. Too long, too knowing. She didn't sleep. At dawn, Alexander's door remained closed. No calls, no messages, just silence. The hotel, though opulent as ever, felt colder. Emily returned to the front desk and saw something taped beneath the console. A folded note. Her name in clean black ink. Inside, "They know about you now. Stay near people. Burn this." Her hand shook as the words sank in. Something deeper than she imagined was moving beneath the surface, and she was now a piece on someone's board. The penthouse door wasn't fully closed. Emily approached with the tea tray, her footsteps soundless on the carpet. A voice drifted through the gap. Not Alexander's, deeper, clipped. "She's a liability." A pause. "She doesn't know anything," Alexander answered, tone low but firm. Yet, Emily's breath caught. She edged closer, heart racing. "We've confirmed the breach," the other man continued. "It's a targeted leak. The files you exposed, Someone's moving fast. And now, the blackmail threats. Another silence then, I know. They'll come here next. The hotel isn't secure. The tray trembled in her hands. Words echoed in her mind. Blackmail, target leak. Before she could slip away, the door opened wider. Alexander stood there, gaze unreadable. Come in. She obeyed, but questions swirled. The security consultant gave her a cool glance before nodding and leaving. Alexander said nothing more, as if daring her to ask. Later that night, in her tiny apartment, the unease refused to fade. She triple-checked locks, peered through curtains. Just nerves, she told herself, until the window shattered. A single figure darted through the shadows. Drawers overturned. The bedroom ransacked. Emily barely escaped. Phone clutched tight as she fled into the rain. By the time she reached the hotel, soaked and shaking, Alexander was already waiting. No questions, no lectures. Only a quiet, "Come with me." He led her to a discreet private suite. The door locked behind them with a soft click. "You should have told me," she managed, voice raw. Alexander's mask cracked. "I wanted to keep you out of this." She met his gaze, defiant despite her fear. Too late. He exhaled, shoulders tense. "I've made enemies exposing things that should have stayed buried. Now they want me ruined, or worse. And now they know about you." Emily's mind reeled. Housekeeper turned receptionist turned what? Pawn? Witness? Ally? "You'll stay here until it's safe," Alexander continued, voice tightening. "I'll have security assigned." "Because you owe me?" she asked, bitterness seeping through. A flicker of something deeper crossed his expression. "Because I care what happens to you." The words hung between them. Unexpected, too raw. The air shifted. Emily's pulse thudded for reasons beyond fear. For a moment, their eyes locked. Not billionaire and maid. Just two people caught in a storm neither could control. But clarity returned swift and cold. Emily pulled away first. "I don't belong in this," she whispered. Alexander's reply was soft, final. "You already are." Outside, unseen figures still watched. Inside, an undeniable current pulsed between them, one neither dared name. Emily lay awake in the unfamiliar bed that night, questions crowding her mind. Escape seemed impossible. Trust felt dangerous. Yet when dawn crept through the curtains, one truth remained. Walking away was no longer an option. The Clarion Grand no longer felt like a sanctuary. Word of the leak spread fast, faster than Alexander's team could contain it. Journalists prowled the streets. Lawyers circled like vultures. Inside the penthouse, the transformation was swift. Laptops replaced art. Blueprints covered the dining table. Alexander Drake, once the ghost of the hotel, now hid in plain sight. And Emily was still here. Not by design, not by force, by choice, or perhaps inertia. The line blurred. She brought coffee, fielded encrypted calls, learned too much to step away. What began as reluctant duty soon wove into something deeper. They sifted through fragments of betrayal, emails from trusted executives, anonymous transfers, board members who'd smiled at Alexander the week before. One evening, a courier entered the lobby, harmless on the surface. But Emily noticed the gait, the gloved hands, details no regular messenger displayed. She intercepted him with forced politeness. A quick glance inside the box revealed a thin wire running beneath the foam insert. Panic surged. Without a word, Emily triggered a silent alert and slipped the box aside. Security swarmed within minutes. The device, a pressure-triggered charge, was disarmed before Alexander ever touched it. Later, he stood before her, mask on. No corporate poise, just gratitude edged with something more fragile. "You saved my life," he said simply. Emily shrugged, though her hands trembled. "You would have done the same." Would he? Maybe not before. But now, the walls between them thinned. That night, the war room quieted. Screens dimmed. Papers lay forgotten. Alexander poured 2 glasses of whiskey, unspoken permission to stay. He spoke first, voice rough. "I built an empire I can't trust. Surrounded by people I can't believe. You're the only one who hasn't lied to me." Emily swallowed hard. I've spent years trying to blend into the background. I didn't think anyone noticed. His eyes softened. I noticed. Silence stretched, charged but unthreatening. In the low light, words flowed easier. Alexander confessed the weight of isolation, decades of calculated moves, friendships that unraveled under scrutiny. He had no one left. Emily hesitated, then spoke of her own scars. A father who vanished into debt, a mother she barely held together, dreams shelved for survival. They weren't so different after all. By the time the clock struck 3, the space between them felt changed. No longer employer and employee. No longer billionaire and maid. Just two fractured souls tethered by shared loneliness. As Emily stood to leave, Alexander caught her hand, not possessively, but as if anchoring himself to something real. "Stay a little longer," he said, voice barely audible. She did. Neither spoke again that night. But in that fragile silence, something unspoken took root. Tomorrow would bring more danger, more games. But for now, they had this, one night where trust felt possible. The message arrived at dawn, unsigned but unmistakable. Meeting. Tonight. Clarion Grand. No police. No press. Or everything burns. Alexander read it twice, jaw set. His team urged him to leave the city. Disappear. Instead, he chose the battleground he knew best, his own hotel. By nightfall, the Clarion gleamed under a strained calm. Security moved in patterns, eyes sweeping every shadow. Guests were quietly relocated, but tension thrummed beneath the polished surface. Alexander dressed with practiced precision. When he reached for his cufflinks, Emily was already there, steadying his hand. "You don't have to face them alone," she said simply. His gaze held hers. "Then don't leave my side." Together, they descended. The lobby had transformed, silent but charged. A group of figures waited near the center. No introductions, no pleasantries, just veiled threats beneath sharp smiles. Emily stood beside Alexander, shoulders squared. Words exchanged were few but sharp. Accusations flew, countered with truths only Alexander dared voice. When tension peaked, one of Alexander's own, a trusted aide, shifted too soon, eyes flicking toward the enemy. Emily caught it, a glance too knowing, a step too eager. Without hesitation, she whispered, "Your man." Left flank. Alexander's voice cut through the air. "Stand down." Exposed, the mole paled. The enemy smiled coldly. "Seems your house isn't so clean, Drake." But the balance had shifted. The traitor removed. The enemy retreated with thinly veiled warnings. The storm passed, but at a cost. By the time the first light crept over the skyline, the lobby was empty. Alexander's empire remained, but cracks had deepened. His future, once immovable, now hung by fragile threads. Back in the penthouse, silence returned. Emily stood beside him on the balcony, city lights fading beneath the dawn. Neither spoke for a long while. At last, Alexander broke the stillness. "You saved me tonight." Again, she shook her head. "I just did what anyone would." He turned fully now, weariness and gratitude woven through his expression. "No, you did what no one else would." From his pocket, he withdrew a slim envelope. Inside, 2 options: safe passage out of the city or a signed contract placing her permanently within his inner circle. "Your choice," he said quietly. "Walk away now, untouched, or stay, and help me rebuild from the ashes." Emily looked out over the city. The life she'd known before felt distant, irrelevant. This world was dangerous, uncertain. Yet here, for the first time in years, she mattered. When she met his gaze, no words were needed. The decision was already made. Alexander's breath caught, a rare flicker of something unguarded. He extended his hand. She took it. For better or worse, they would face whatever came next together. Weeks passed. The storm that once consumed the Clarion Grand faded into whispers. Security softened. The air grew lighter. Emily had changed more than the hotel's routines. Once a stand-in at the front desk, she now moved through the halls with purpose as Alexander Drake's executive assistant. Their relationship had no formal name. By day, it remained professional. Yet in quieter moments, a glance, a smile, or the simple trust exchange between them said more than words could. When the gala was announced, a show of resilience to investors and press, the hotel buzzed anew. Florists filled the lobby with orchids. Crystals sparkled beneath the chandeliers. Cameras waited. Emily watched the spectacle from the sidelines. This world still felt surreal, yet her place within it was no longer in question. Alexander approached the podium, composed as ever. But as he addressed the crowd, his gaze found her. And to those who stood beside me when trust was scarce, he said, voice steady, I own more than words can express. One in particular. The crowd followed his glance. Emily froze, 100 eyes now upon her. Reminded me that loyalty isn't bought, it's earned. Scattered applause followed. Tongues wagged. Whispers spread faster than champagne. Later, when the last guest had left and the hotel returned to its midnight hush, Alexander sought her out. In his study, the mask of the public figure fell away. He held a small velvet box. For you, he said simply. Inside lay a delicate silver locket. Embedded within, a tiny ornate key gleamed. To what? She asked, voice low. Alexander's smile held no pretense. To whatever future we choose. The words lodged deep. Possibility hung in the air. Uncertain, unwritten, theirs to define. Emily closed the locket with a quiet click. Morning came crisp and clear. The gala now memory. The hotel returned to rhythm. As sunlight streamed through the towering glass, Emily approached the front desk once more, not as a stand-in, not as someone who didn't belong, but as herself. She paused, fingers brushing the smooth marble. The past weeks flickered through her mind. A billionaire's wary trust, danger that had stripped away pretense, a bond forged in fire. Emily stepped behind the desk, straightened her shoulders, met her reflection in the gleaming surface, no longer uncertain, no longer invisible. The revolving doors turned. She lifted her gaze as a new guest entered. This time, no fear, only quiet confidence. A smile touched her lips. The story wasn't over. In truth, it had only begun. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from and drop your thoughts in the comments. What did you think of Emily's incredible journey from a humble housekeeper to Alexander Drake's trusted ally? Were you surprised by the bond that formed between them amidst danger and betrayal? Your feedback means the world to us. Don't miss our next story. Each one brings new lessons of courage, love, and transformation. Until then, keep believing that even ordinary moments can change a life.